Push the button. Push the goddamn button.
Push the goddamn button.
You heard what she said.
Peter, I just want to get one final thought from you. Are there words that are used to describe men that offend you?
Not particularly, and if there are some I don't like, I certainly wouldn't want them banned. But it always goes back to that old adage: sticks and stones may break my bones, but there will always be something to offend a feminist.
Peter Lloyd.
No, that's just obnoxious.
Peter
Sorry,
Lloyd,
you have to give me a
I
chance
think we'll
to
let you
respond
carry
to
on this
that is
discussion.
ridiculous. No, hang on, I won't do your show again if you don't let me respond
Go on,
to that.
Kate, have a word.
Come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, first of all,
called French foreign minister, for instance. So
no, but we're in the process of arranging for me to go to France and to Germany.
Do you know who he is?
Don't start pub quizzing me, don't start pub quizzing me.
He's the French foreign minister. Do you know his name?
No, and and I'm not going to start answering your questions on this.
Well, it was just we had that while you were Shadow Defence Secretary on DEFCON.
Do you know what? What really upsets me about your attitude to me is that you do this with me. I don't remember you doing it with anybody else. You know. Have you done it to David Davis? Have you asked these questions? Did Sky journalists have a go at Boris Johnson on this basis?
I've had discussions
How about Liam Fox?
I've had discussions with David Davis. Discussions with Liam Fox.
I mean, honestly, really.
But quite seriously.
Can we talk about some serious stuff?
Well,
why don't we talk about Syria? How about talking about North Korea? You really want to spend this time pub quizzing me?
Let me talk. I won't then.
What's with you?
Let's talk about North Korea. Let's talk precisely
Sunday
about
morning,
that. Do you
honestly.
think? Well, the fact that you don't know the French foreign minister's name.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, what about the South Korean president then? If we want to talk about North Korea, do you know the name of the South Korean president?
Let me talk about North Korea.
Who's been talking about nuking Pyongyang?
Let me talk about North Korea.
Well, a call from Boris Johnson to the South Korean president, whose name I guess you don't know.
And the important point, which is about our security and world security, is that how we are going to approach North Korea into the future.
All right, but how would we
And if you want me to go with you
president?
to a pub tonight, and we can do a pub quiz tonight,
I'm
let's
not the
do
Shadow
it.
Foreign Secretary.
You know, honestly.
I'm not the Shadow Foreign Secretary. You know, I mean, we're talking about perhaps a global conflict here, and one nation
And the
threatening
important thing is
one nation threatening nuclear strikes on the other.
Yes.
Thought you might have been rather.
And I can tell you that I am extremely interested in this, and I will talk about.
President is.
I will. I'm not getting drawn by you into this nonsense. I'm quite prepared to talk politics with you and to talk about the principles
we will in a minute,
and the threats to the country.
But just for future reference, Park Hoon-hee. It is a she. But we will move on.
We must always make sure that we are prepared to confront and stamp out whenever it raises its ugly head. And whether that's racism, whether that's anti-Semitism or sexism, you know, I think that we absolutely must call it for what it is.
But it's interesting you're saying there is more to be done within the Labour Party.
There is always more to be done. There is always more to be done, and do you know what? There's certainly a lot more to be done by the Tories, and I certainly think that sometimes when it comes to sexism, some Sky presenters need to look at themselves too. I really do. It really upsets me that every time I come on here, you do another pub quiz with me, because you do not do it with anybody else, and I do think that it's patronising.
Let me address it, Emily. It's not, because you are the Shadow Foreign Secretary.
Yeah, right.
And this was about the French Foreign Minister, Jean-Marc Ayrault, who Boris Johnson has met now.
Let's take this offline, because I've got a lot to say to you, and I don't think a lot of it ought to be broadcast.
Emily Thornberry, for the time being, thank you very much indeed, and more than keen to have that discussion on air if you like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a question way back when I can't even remember when Mr. Johnson, Alan Johnson, was Shadow Chancellor. We had discussions about the rate of national insurance, which he didn't know, and he should have known, I would have suspected, as Shadow Chancellor. It's Alan Johnson. I'll just leave it there with you. Emily Thornberry, thank you very much.
I'm sure you ought to get the last word, of course.
And you're watching Moynihan on Sky News.
Sheriff David Clark of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and Julie Roginski, Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor. Great to see you both.
Good to see you, Megan.
I love when Sheriff wears his hat. Sheriff, your thoughts on the president's comments?
Well, you know, Barack Obama for 7+ years has played the race card that every time somebody criticized him, it was because he was black, and it scared off a lot of Republicans. So now they're going to switch and try to play the gender card. The problem is the American public is tired of this class warfare. The reason why they don't like Mrs. Bill Clinton is not because she's a woman, it's because she's dishonest. And because she is hiding something, she's hiding the truth. She tries to play herself off as a victim, like she's Little Red Riding Hood, but she's more like the big bad wolf. As soon as you turn your back on her, she'll bite you. Now look, This is politics. It's a contact sport. It's not for the faint of heart. My response to what President Obama said is, if she can't stand the heat, she should get out of the kitchen.
Julie?
Well, first and foremost, I think you just proved my point, Sheriff. And, you and I were outnumbered last week, and I love you, but she's not Mrs. Bill Clinton. She happens to be Hillary Rodham Clinton, who's her own person and is running as her own individual. She's a former senator. She's a Secretary of State. She's not Mrs. Bill Clinton, and I think you just encapsulated exactly why a lot of women think that
it's
she's
not my
getting
job to give you her bio.
It's not her bio, but it's also not your job to assume that she's just a little woman who's married to
She
Mr.
has run with that name for a long time.
Well, she's run for that name because she happens to be married to the former president, but she's certainly not Mrs. Bill Clinton.
She should embrace it.
Well, no, she actually shouldn't embrace it. She should embrace the fact that she's a very accomplished lawyer in her own right, a very accomplished woman in her own right.
Let me ask you this, Julie. Let me ask you this.
Do
you think there's something to the notion that many Americans find the idea of a female president somehow threatening? Do you think there's anything to that?
Unfortunately, I do, and it's a shame because I think, but you have polling showing, poll after poll showing, you have Anna Greenberg, who is a very prominent pollster, saying that her numbers went up when she focused specifically on women's issues, whether it's standing by her man when she was First Lady after the Monica Lewinsky scandal, or working on traditional women's issues, or even working as Secretary of State for Barack Obama, who's a man, but her numbers are not so great when she's running for something, when she's working in healthcare reform, when she's become a principal and taken on roles that are traditionally men's roles. And I think, unfortunately, I hate to say this because as a woman who is living in the 21st century, I would hope this is not the case, but empirical data shows, unfortunately, that it is the case.
Mm-hmm. Sheriff, I remember 8 years ago when Sarah Palin was on the Republican ticket, they were doing full articles about how she was going to balance her situation of having, I think, 5 kids and being vice president. It was just like, basically, for lack of a better term, screw you for writing that, right? Because nobody was wondering how Barack Obama was going to balance having 2 kids.
Yep.
So it's,
Megan,
it's
you
still
took the
there
words
to
out
some
of
extent.
my mouth.
Go ahead.
When you mentioned Sarah Palin, because the way the Democrats treated Sarah Palin was nothing short of shameful. Also, the way they treated Condoleezza Rice when she was the Secretary of State, they did the same thing. So all of a sudden, when it's one of those women who gets close to the White House, then it's okay to trash them. But when it's one of their women, then they try to play the victim card. America's tired of that stuff right now. She should stand on her own 2 feet. Take the heat. Look, this is for the presidency of the United States. Nobody's going to feel sorry for her.
Right.
Nobody's going to back down. I'm glad Donald Trump's not handling her with kid gloves.
Right. Julie, that is true that there was Sarah Palin endured a lot of sexism when she was running, and the women's groups, I mean, the silence was deafening. They were not there for her, you tell me, because she is a Republican.
No question, and I agree with you 100%. Sarah Palin got the short shrift in many ways.
So you understand why Republicans are like,
100%.
boo-hoo, we're not
No.
listening to your complaints now. Where were you when one of ours was being attacked?
First and foremost, some of us were there for Sarah Palin, not specifically on her policies towards women or things that we help women. But some of us did feel that Sarah Palin got incredibly short shrift, especially when you said what people were saying, how is she going to balance having children, and she had a newborn.
And put her on the cover, I think it was of Newsweek, in a photo shoot she did for a biking magazine.
Yep. But listen, I'm not sure she should have posed for that necessarily for that picture. But
come on.
But having said that, look, I mean, there's no question that if you went to the Republican convention, as all of us did, and you saw some of the buttons being handed out, and you saw some of the things that were said about her, she was called the B word, she was called the C word, she was called all sorts of names that I've never heard a man being called, and you can't say that's anything other than sexism, unfortunately.
All right, got to leave it at that. Give you the last word. Great to see you both.
Good to see you.